Attention darts fans, after searching high and low, to and fro, from coast to coast on wine and toast, the award for best hashtag in the game goes to Dynamite Darts Content, and your winner is the weekly Dartscast, baby. 3 words, Dynamite Darts Content. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the weekly Dartscast. I'm Alex Moss, and a warm welcome back to my co-host. Might have to get his title right this time. He is now the local legend of Montrose to Shepherd. Burton, DeWitt, how are you doing?
Yes, or at least I was. I have to double check to make sure I still am. I'm doing all right. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing good, thank you. Good to have you back and chat about darts. There's lots to discuss as always. We've got 3 guests for you coming up, so look forward to them a little bit later on. But let's get things rolling with the new PDC season. Kicks off on Friday. The 2020 season was a memorable season for a lot of reasons. Do you see the next 12 months following suit?
It's going to be tough just based on, you start with the weirdness that was last year because of COVID. We hope that we don't have another 12 months of it, but we will at least have some where there is going to be no predictability in the schedule alone, let alone the results. So it will be a bit weird for a while, but at some point, things will likely start to go back to something that we used to call normal. And it's going to create just a completely different feel. But even when that does happen, you look back at what happened in the last 12 months in darts, and you see the number of players who won their first major, Dimitri Vanderberg, Jose de Sousa, first PDC major in terms of Glenn Durrant, and seeing a new world number one. Hadn't been able to say that for 7 years when Goran Price, on the last day of the darting season, became world number one by winning the world championship. And even, seeing resurgence from players like Kerry Anderson making the two biggest ranking major finals on the calendar. There was a lot of diversity in winners and a lot of diversity in finalists, and it's going to be tough to match that. Even if Michael Van Gerwen doesn't get back to his best, it's going to be tough to have 6 different major champions again. It could happen. It absolutely could happen. But I think we're going to see more majors get won by the top 3 players in the world this year than happened last year. So in that regard, it'll still be memorable, but not for as many different reasons as it was last year.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be just as good, if not better, if we're basing it on what we've seen over the last 12 months. And we've just had the PDC put on their own awards at a little bit higher production value than what our awards were. But Germain Price sweeping a lot of the awards, the Player of the Year, Fans Player of the Year, the PDPA Players Player of the Year, the Pro Tour Player of the Year, 1R Player of the Year as well, of course. But you look back at the season and yes, he was dominant for a few parts of it towards the back end of the year, especially finishing up with that world title and becoming the world number one. But there were parts of it when he wasn't that dominant force. And you mentioned the titles that were won by Jose de Sousa, Dimitri Vanderberg, Glenn Durrant. Germain Price wasn't close in the final stages of those events. So it will be interesting to see how this year goes, and a lot of it will depend on Michael Van Gerwen because, as we know before, when we've spoken on this show, he's had a dip in form and we've wrote him off. Other people have wrote him off and he's come back firing. He's won big titles, and I just look back to, okay, he's not the world number one anymore and he'll be wanting to get that back as soon as he can. But you look at the World Championship as well. He's gone 2 years now without winning it. The last time he did that, 2015, 2016, Gary Anderson did the double. And you look at the season that Michael Van Gerwen produced after that, it was arguably the best ever season we've seen in the PDC. He won 26 titles that season. A lot of the big titles he took and capped it off with that World Championship at the end of the year. We've now got 3 players on £1 million plus on the Order of Merit for the first time. So that race to be the number one over the year is going to be fun to watch. A lot of it will depend as well on what events do get to go ahead. There's European Tour events that are going to be coming off the ranking this year. Will we see as many European Tour events like we did 2 years ago? Will we see all the big TV events go ahead? Will we see as many floor events go ahead? There's still a lot of questions to be answered as far as how this season is going to look. And you're going to hear in a few moments' time from Graham Fairhurst, the PDC tournament director, and he's hoping to get an announcement out this weekend on how the first couple of months are going to look. We're going to talk about the UK Open in a moment. Details of that are out now, but a lot of it will depend on what we do see darts-wise this year. And for players, they've had this spell now where we've had events behind closed doors, the TV events, and unfortunately, that is going to be the way things go for a few months more at least. And it's just about adapting. Can they adapt to those surroundings better than maybe what they did last season? Because the fans might not be there, but the rewards are. There is still these big pots of prize money to play for. And what comes after that, you see Jose and Dimitri now in the Premier League this year. So, yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be just as good, if not better.
Yes, and you mentioned 2016, the year Michael Van Gogh had. It started, of course, out on the ranking side by winning the UK Open in Minehead. That will not be the case this year because the UK Open is not in Minehead. It will be behind closed doors in Milton Keynes in March. When do you think we'll start to see fans get back into the darts?
Yeah, it's a big question, and we spoke a few weeks ago, the PDC announcing that the Premier League is going to be pushed back to Easter time in the hope to get fans back, but we've just in the UK Open, that's now going to be behind closed doors on the dates that we were expecting if it would have been held usually the first weekend of March. No fans, unfortunately, but you look at that event and to get it on with fans in Minehead, it's a unique event, a little bit, as you know, like the Players' Championship Finals, which is at the same venue over that weekend. The PDC sell a lot of weekend packages, so it's not just being there for the darts, the sessions, it's everything around that venue and all the different things that are going on that weekend. You've got thousands of people there in the same venues, just not going to happen on that usual slot of March. And we saw on social media there are people talking about, well, let's push it back to further down the line, a little bit like we saw last year with some events getting pushed back. But I think for the PDC, they just want to get events on, and we've seen they are able to put events on during these times behind closed doors. Now, how long that money's going to last without the fans? The UK Open 2020, that was the last big event that we had with the full crowds, and before everything got shut down and then things started going again. When is the next event going to be with fans? I think we're looking further down the line. I think we're looking towards the second half of 2021. Now, whether that means the Premier League gets pushed back even more, I'm not quite so sure. There's still a long way to go before then, and things could change. We've said that on the show since the virus happened. We just don't know for sure how these things are going to play out. But if I was going to say right now, getting to the end of January, the first month of the year, I think we are looking towards the second half of the year at the earliest, and fingers crossed the World Match Play. That would be great to see fans come back for that. But at this point in time, where we are with things, I think it's hard to see fans coming back in the first quarter, second quarter of the year.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And I think it was a optimistic prediction to try to get the Premier League started by Easter, but not one that if at the time was completely unrealistic. We still don't right now, but we didn't then know at all how the virus rollout would affect things. And I think things are starting very slowly to get better in most places, but it's going to take some time because you have to get in the UK, 70 million people, the vaccine. In the US, it's 300 million. And then throughout Europe, hundreds of millions of people across Germany, France, Italy, and a few other countries that are there as well. So it's going to take some time, but we're going to start to see things get back probably in the next couple months. Things are going to start to clear up, but it'll be some time before you can have definitely some time before you can have a full crowd, but even be able to get 25 or 50% capacity. I think the World Match Play is a good bet for that. I think by summer, I don't know if we could have a 100% capacity, but it would be nice to have 25% or even 50% up in Blackpool for the PDC's flagship summer event. But I don't think it'll be before that, or it won't be much before that. Maybe you can start the Premier League a little early. We'll see. We still have a lot to hang tight for. I'll bring that line in early in the show since I wasn't on last week to tell you all to hang tight. So we still have some hanging tight to do. But I think you're right. At the earliest, it'll be sometime late in the second quarter of 2021.
Yeah, I think we're on for a record of hang tights already for this show. But let's move on to our first guest on this week's show, and it is with the PDC Tournament Director, Graham Fairhurst. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the PDC Tournament Director, Graham Fairhurst. Thanks very much for the time again, Graham. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Alex. Nice to be back on. It seems 5 listeners we chatted, but I'm sure it's quite a few months ago. A lot of things have happened since then, but yeah, pleased to be back, mate.
Yes, you're right. We last had you on in July, just before the summer series and the tour resuming after the break, 128 players, 5 days of action. How did that week go, the first week back with PDC Darts?
Yes, it went probably better than we expected. The players adapted very well, having to isolate for the test results. We had our eyes open on how quick test results can't come back and can come back. So I think, as your viewers probably know, that they were watching it and looking through Darts Connect, we did delay the start. So we learned the lesson from that straight away to be adaptable and flexible and that sort of thing. But yeah, it went really well, I believe, until the first dart was about to be thrown on the stream and then the lights went out. But overall, the staff were great, the venue was great, the testing procedure was great, the testing company was great, and the players, all 128 of them adapted really well from getting there to be isolated to the plane. And I think the plane standard for people being away that long over the 5 days was really good as well.
Yeah, and a few weeks later we then had the World Match Play behind closed doors with no fans. We're used to obviously it being at Blackpool. How strange was it seeing the tournament play out away from the famous Winter Gardens? Yeah,
it was very strange. Obviously all the years we've been there, again, staff and players say it's probably their favourite tournament of the calendar, and it was very strange. But again, everybody adapted. Jumping forward a few months, somebody mentioned to me just recently that Alexandra Palace, that felt like the World Championships. It was in its right place. It was at the right time of the year. Whereas, the Grand Prix, the match play, the Grand Slam, yes, they carried the same titles and the same prestige, but didn't quite feel the same, not being in like original or normal venues. So, that part of it was strange. I think, again, after the first couple of games, the players adapted to the false crowd noise and the surroundings, and again I believe viewing figures wise and the comments we have from the viewers again come across all right and was very enjoyable.
During this pandemic, the guys at the PDC, you've had to keep a close eye on the changing rules and regulations out there. How hard has it been organising events since you've come back? I remember when we first had you on just before the summer series, you said that was logistically the hardest event that you've had to put on as tournament director.
From that side of it, yes, it was until probably July, and then I found it harder to try and organise 32 COVID tests than I did organising 128 of them. Because obviously not everybody's playing at the same time on the TV events. So again, we had to be adaptable on that for when people come in. But at the same time, we are governed by the guidelines we've got to follow and when the testing company can be there. So that was a little bit of a challenge as well. But we're getting used to it now. The players are used to it. We would obviously love to not do it, but it's one of the things we've got to put the events on. So, the quicker, the better we get it back to normality, and then everybody can just come and go as they want. But until that time, we will continue doing what we're doing.
Well, fortunately, there's been very few players or officials that have tested positive for the virus when the events have gone on and you've been doing the testing beforehand. I think we had 2 at the World Grand Prix. There was 1 in the World Championship. Given you've got all the players coming from around the world, did you expect more positive cases and more juggling things around than you have had to do?
Probably yes, it would be the right answer to that. When you see the cases per day in the country and the different areas, and they have players travelling from Europe and, like you say, from all around the world, we were expecting a lot more. We have had things in place where if we do get positive tests, we can get players in. But as you've seen at the Worlds, that doesn't always work, because then the reserves can be tested positive as well. So that's a challenge, and what we don't, the floor events are a bit different, where we can, it's not as bad having a bye in the floor events, but it doesn't certainly look good on TV. But at times it can't be helped. And again, everybody accepts that. That's the way it is at the moment in the current situation.
Well, let's look ahead then to 2021. We've got some listener questions coming up as well, but a lot of questions about Q School, which is coming up 2 weeks on Monday. Firstly, the change in the format. We've got the 2 stages. Was this a change purely down to the pandemic, or with the growing number of entries that we've had in recent years, is this something that the PDC have considered doing anyway?
Yeah, we've looked at different options for the last couple of years regarding the size of the entry. So coupled with the pandemic, the changes were made this year, and we had nothing but good feedback from that. It also helps the guys who unfortunately lost a tour card this year. That gives them a little bit of not a seed, but it gives them the straightforward route into stage 2, which is a little bit of a reward for having, if you can call it a reward, for having a tour card last year. As you know yourself, watching Q School over the years and the results coming in, it's a tough field. So that was just a little bit of, like I say, for the want of a better word, a reward to them. But yeah, a lot of it, again, was down to the pandemic. To the guidelines again to get the event on, we've got to keep numbers low. We're in constant contact with Milton Keynes local council officials, the venue, and I think overall, the 2 stages helps obviously keep the numbers down, and fingers crossed it'll work really well. And you never know, maybe something that we use going forward in normal circumstances as well.
10 years ago last week that we had the first ever Q School in 2011. A few years ago you introduced the European Q School, but this year's must be the most challenging to put on. How have the PDC been able to get the green light to put Q School on?
Yeah, again, just what we say about testing and the challenges in the current situation. We've got to do a lot of things. A lot of guidelines to follow, and we get permission to do certain events. All our events we get permission to do. But the guidelines that are constantly changing. We're still awaiting what we're going to be doing with testing for Q School, which I know is difficult because players want to know. But until we're told exactly how we can do it, we've just got to keep the players informed as much as we can. So yeah, it is a challenge again. Obviously, and then the European one, they've got the different restrictions. They're a bit more advanced in the testing over there, so they will probably be doing rapid testing. But until we get final confirmation on what we've got to do, we'll just, like I say, keep the players informed as much as we can, and then send out the final players' briefs hopefully next week.
And we've all got our fingers crossed that Q School will be able to go ahead, but is there a backup plan in case it can't happen in a few weeks' time?
I'm sure there will be. It hasn't been discussed much as yet, to be honest. But because all the signs are that we will be able to proceed with Q School. But I'm sure Matt and Barry have something up their sleeves in case at the last minute the guidelines change to say that we can't do it. I'm sure those 2 guys there will have something ready for us if we need to change it.
Question we've had in from Warren Allsworth. He says, if a player is forced to withdraw from Q School for COVID-related reasons, be that a positive test or due to travel, will they still be eligible for the Challenge Tour this year?
That's something we're discussing at the moment with the PDPA. So once that's an agreement is reached to that, we will inform everybody again of that answer.
And last one on Q School before we look further ahead. Luke Tucker says, he'd like to know, would the PDC ever consider the residency of a player and not the nationality when it comes to Q School, and which one they can enter?
We have a rule in place for residency of players, which is rule off the top of my head, and hope I get this right, which is on the PDC website, is 7.6. So if a player of a different nationality has resided in the country for more than 5 years, they can then choose to play in that country's or that section of Q School, but then they cannot go back to change their nationality again within a period of time. So, for example, Anastasia, if she wanted to play, because she's lived in the UK for a long time, she wanted to play UK Q School, she could, but then, say for example, she got a card and did really well, she would not be able, she wouldn't be classed as Russian for like World Cup selection or anything, unfortunately.
George Dobson has a question on the Premier League, which of course has been delayed until Easter with hope to get some fans back. Will it be delayed as long as possible in an attempt to get fans back, or will it definitely start at Easter regardless?
Again, that's more an answer for Matt or Barry, but I would, the other thing we've got to take in consideration for the Premier League is TV scheduling as well. We do have TV contracts, and they can't just, a lot of TV, obviously, especially the sports channels, can't just move things around because there's that much sport going on. But yeah, I think the plans are in place to, keep it on hold for as long as possible, with all circumstances being taken into consideration.
Excellent. Well, on the calendar, for obvious reasons, we know why it's not out yet for 2021, but are you guys waiting for Q School to happen so you've got the full quota of tour card holders before you put anything out?
From our last conversation regarding the calendar, we were hoping to announce maybe the first 2 months, and obviously all pending and changes sort of like that can be made if needed. The first couple of months worth of events will hopefully be announced, and I say this again, hopefully round about the Masters time, so back end of next week.
Excellent. Well, a question away from the calendar, Captain Mike Yates says, and I don't know if you've seen this, it's come up in the last few days, but given the call from one management company for yellow and red cards for gamesmanship, A, do you think the referees have been too hands-off, and B, will the PDC and or the DRA act to cut down perceived gamesmanship?
Yes, obviously gamesmanship's has got a wide area in people's interpretation of gamesmanship. We are sitting down with the referees and the DRA as soon as possible in the next 2 or 3 weeks, obviously via Zoom, and we'll be looking into this and see what we can do and what are we do have in place sanctions, which again some people may not be aware of, but we just need to probably get it all together again and just maybe update them and just have a clear path of what referees need to do and when they need to do it.
And one question that you've already seen, of course, from Martin Leake, who says to ask who has more Costa points, him or Ted?
Ted is Martin. Obviously, that's an internal thing, and tell him it'll be me, because I believe at the minute I have 88,000 and he's got 84. So I'm in front with that at the moment. And Ted, just if Ted is listening, he's gone very quiet on the football side at the minute. I know my team's Newcastle, so I've got nothing to brag about. But Ted is Liverpool, and when they're doing well, he's very vocal. But he's been very quiet recently.
Yeah, obvious reason for that. And lastly, I've been staring at a Newcastle United badge for the last few minutes, but when we last had you on the show in July, you said you don't know what's going to last longer, COVID-19 or the takeover of Newcastle United. Both are still here 6 months later.
Yeah,
which one do you think will finish first?
The way things are going with my club, I would think probably COVID will have disappeared and the whole world will be back to normal before Newcastle gets sold.
Graham, it's always a pleasure to get you on. I know it's a busy time for you guys at the moment, so I appreciate the time and wish you all the best for next week with the Masters getting underway and Q School in a few weeks and for the rest of 2021.
Yeah, thanks for having us on again, Alex, and we'll look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thanks again to Graham for joining us. Now let's look ahead to the Masters. The PDC's now traditional curtain raiser for the season takes place this weekend, and our question of the week on Twitter is this the most excited you have been to watch the Masters?
It might just be. And, you go back, the first two stagings of it were held in the autumn, when there's already a bunch of events on the calendar, probably too many televised events on the calendar. So they moved it to January / February. And I don't know, I did like when the World Cup was in this time slot, but it replaced the World Cup as that event at the beginning of the season. It kind of makes sense there, since it previously top 16, now top 24. It's the reward for ending the year near the top of the rankings and let those top players get that extra TV tournament before we get on to all of the Pro Tour events. But this year, because of everything going on and the fact that from day to day, we don't know if there's going to be a suspension in the calendar in any sport, let alone darts, I think it adds something to it. And we haven't had Q School before. Usually we've had Q School. For those of us who, if you're obsessed enough to listen to this show, then you're probably obsessed enough to follow Q School as well. So we're speaking to the same audience in that regard. We haven't had that for the last week, and Q School is a fun way to distract us for 4 days when there's no darts to actually watch. Well, there's been no darts at all now for 3-4 weeks. And with the expansion to 24 players and that added carrot of a spot in the Premier League for, 9 of these players are there, but for one of the other 15 if they go on a very good run. Just adds that little bit extra to look forward to and to enjoy in this event. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see how some of those players who've never played in it before get to do. players like Jeffrey Swan and Chris Dobey, as well as new players in the top 16. So yeah, I'm going to say yes, but also part of that is because usually I'm just not that excited for this tournament, and this year there is a little bit to be excited about.
I'm a yes too, and looking at how the vote's going at the moment on Twitter, it's going to be running for another day or so, but 68% going with yes, 32% going with no, and you guys have tweeted us as well your thoughts on it. Sarah Nichols says no. For the last few years, I've been very excited to be there watching in person, missing my annual trip to MK this year. That is one of the downsides, again, that these events are played behind closed doors and darts fans aren't able to go, but there's a lot of people saying that they are excited for it. And Damien Cust says, I've been criticised and expanded the Masters to 24 players, but I can't deny that the answer to this question is yes for me. Perhaps it's more about Tyske being in the field, though. Matt Johnson 89 says, for me, the fact the final Premier League spot is on the line adds something, but I find it difficult to get excited for a non-ranking event without a crowd. Another point there, but I guess with the Masters as well, and we did a question of the week a few weeks ago, what's the most prestigious Masters named event in sport? And of course the likes of golf, snooker come up as well. Darts is lower down on the list, especially the PDC's version, because there are a lot of events over the year. We're lucky to see a lot of events on TV, and this one kind of is lower down the list, isn't it, on what ones we look forward to the most, what's riding on it. And I think we're going to come on to talk about it in a moment, but the changes that they've made this year with the Premier League spot, more players being involved, it just adds that bit of excitement. But as you mentioned as well, after the PDC World Championship, usually we roll into the BDO World Championship. Sometimes there's a bit of an overlap as well, so we're straight into the other one already. Then you've got Q-School the following week. We've had none of that this year, no BDO Worlds. Q-School is in a few weeks' time. So since Gomer Price hit that match-winning double, there's not been a lot to watch or to really sink our teeth into. So it's been 3 or 4 weeks, and I think a lot of darts fans are just excited to see darts on TV again. And this event, okay, you've got the first night with the best of 11s, but after that you're going to get a lot of longer format games, best of 19, best of 21 over a weekend, top players in the world. I think you've got to be excited to watch it. As
mentioned, the change in format, expanding from the 16 players that it's been for the last 8 years up to 24 now, as well as, of course, that last spot in the Premier League on the line. What do you make of those two changes to the format and what to play for?
Yeah, I like both of them. I think maybe in time we could see this go from 24 to 32 players, given the strength in depth that we're seeing in the PDC. You look at the players that have got into this event ranked 17th to 24th that we weren't expecting to see in the field, and we've spoke to a few of them on the show. You're going to hear from one of them in a moment, but Stephen Bunting, Chris Dobey, both weren't expected to be playing in this event because it has been the top 16 ever since it started. But pushing it up to 24, I think you look down the list of players 17th to 24th and the players that they're going to go up against on that opening session, it's made it more exciting. There's 8 more games than what we usually used to see, and okay, they're not the longer format that we used to see in recent years with the Masters, but it is a nice little curtain raiser, isn't it, for players to maybe warm up. We don't know how important this session's going to be for the players. There's been a bit of a break between this and the World Championship. For some of the players that went out early in the World Championship, it's been a longer break. So if they're able to get on that stage, get a win and go into that Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, whenever they're playing, that could be a big difference. Who knows? But I like the changes. I like the fact that we've got that Premier League spot. Now, whether that's done because there wasn't a clear-cut person to put in that 10th spot, or maybe this is something that we see carry on next year and all the years going forward, they keep that spot vacant and say the Masters is your showcase, your last chance to push yourself into that spot and have a deep run. I really like that, and who knows, when we get to that Sunday finals day and you've got a couple of players that aren't in the Premier League, we've got 15 out of the 24 in this lineup that aren't in the Premier League, and you've still got a few involved, then they'll be looking around the practice room going, well, this player's not in it yet. If I get another win, does that put the pressure on them if they're more likely to get in? So it just adds another dimension to it, and I'm looking forward to that side of things, seeing who gets into the Premier League in that 10th spot, because those 15 players, if one of them goes and wins the Masters this weekend and beats a lot of the top boys, you can't really argue with them being included.
Yes, indeed. And I like it for this year. I think there was no point to have the entire field set when you knew there was going to be a couple-month break. But it's not always going to work like that. And you go back, just 12 months ago, you had the Masters, and then just a few days later, the first night of the Premier League, the following Thursday. So there's a lot of logistics behind the Premier League and a normal calendar that wouldn't necessarily work if you have to wait to see what happens at the Masters. That said, I've always been a proponent of mixing it up and mixing up how you decide who gets in there. And I've said before that I would love to see a tournament to decide the final spot. And that's what we got this year. It's not necessarily the tournament that I would have picked for it and not the way I would have thought it would have come about, but it is a tournament that is in essence a play-in spot for the last spot in the field. And okay, it's not necessarily going to go to whoever goes the furthest of the 15 players not in, especially since, it's possible 2 of them will end up making the semifinals and both losing. Then you have to pick between them. But there's going to be a very strong argument for whoever goes the furthest, even if it's a player who might not be someone who the PDC otherwise would have selected for the spot. And I think that adds a dimension of fairness into it. But that said, you could have done that in other ways as well. And a tournament explicitly to determine the last place in the Premier League could be really good television, whether it's a 4-player round robin or an 8-player knockout tournament held on Sky the Thursday before the Premier League during that gap of time, or starting the night before the Masters even, because the Masters goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday in a given year. That could work. And I'd like to maybe see them try that next year. I like the idea of mixing up the final spot and putting it here in the Masters. Works very well for this year, but it might not work other years. As far as the expansion to 24, I think that's good. There's already enough opportunities for the top 16. This gets 8 extra players that match on TV and potentially more, and gives them the chance to, play into the field. If they beat one of the top 16 players, they get to continue on against the top 8 in the world. I think that's an added level of fairness because the top 16 are going to go to the World Match Play and the World's Grand Prix anyway, assuming they're still in the top 16. So I do like this.
Well, let's hear from one of the players that is going to be in the Masters. He is one of the extra 8 players in the field this year. Here's our chat with Chris Dobey. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Hollywood Chris Dobey. Thanks for the time, Chris. How you doing?
Not a problem, mate. Yeah, I'm doing good. Nice to be back.
It's good to have you on, and it's been a little over a year since we last had you on, end of November 2019. Lots to catch up on. The first thing to talk about is the World Championship at the end of that year. What was that afternoon at Alexandra Palace like playing Fallon Sherrock?
Yeah, it was great. Obviously, it was the task that I wanted, and obviously I had to prepare for it, not only just for the crowd, but I had to try and back it up with my A game, and yeah, I felt pretty good going into that game.
There was a lot of attention on Fallon, and quite rightly so, for what she'd achieved in that tournament. But for you to go up there and the crowd against you average 101, I don't think many people mention that, just how well that you played on that day.
Yeah, well, that's it. People tend to forget that. Obviously, all eyes was on Fallon. What you had done was fantastic. So yeah, well, I think I kind of enjoyed that more as well because people didn't have their eyes on me. It was all on Fallon, and I just got to play my own game, and it was probably one of my best games.
And the next round, you losing their last set to Glenn Durrant. Was that video of him unwrapping the Newcastle United shirt recently a bit of payback for that?
Of course. Yeah, it was one of those games where it was hard to take because I felt I deserved to win that game. I think the only set he possibly should have won was the last one, and he beat us comfortably in it. But I think I missed crucial darts early doors and gave him a 3-1 lead, and it was hard to come back from that, but I got it to 3-3, and I fell away at the end. He had one tremendous set, and that was the last one as well. So yeah, it was a kick in the teeth, but now those positives to take, and I've took it into this year coming.
And into 2020, and before the virus shut down everything, I've got to mention the UK Open and the game that you had against Christopher Tyske. You both averaged 105. You win 10-9 in the end. You've been involved in a fair few high-quality games in the PDC, but where does that one rank for you?
Yeah, I think that's number one, to be fair, in performance-wise, as well as getting the win. Although it wasn't on main stage, it was on stage 2, which was still recorded, and yeah, it was the player of Christoph's caliber. You know what you're going to get with Christoph. He's never down in the low 90s. he's always either high 90s or over a ton average, so you've got to play well to beat him. And to be fair, I think he missed 2 or 3 match starts to beat us that game as well. But I thought I controlled the game well against Christoph. I went into the lead, I can't remember if it was an 8-6 lead or something, and he come back to go 9-8 in front, which obviously you see you never give up, until he missed that 1 or 2 match crucial darts. And yeah, I've just got to keep playing that way and just keep giving myself those kind of chances. And if they miss, then they're going to be punished, and that's what I've done.
I remember when the first lockdown happened in March, your name was appearing in a lot of online matches and events. Was it just the idea of keeping that feeling of playing against someone else that made you want to play online?
Yeah, well, that's it. Obviously, we didn't know when we were going to start up again, so I had to take to the online darts quite quick, and obviously the PDC brought the home tour out as well, which helped a lot. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed the first lot of online matches, but it does get tiring because you're playing in competitions, maybe it's 1 or 2 competitions a day, and I kind of lost the love for the online darts other than the home tour. And yeah, obviously once we got back onto the tour, it was kind of hard to go back to playing online darts. But recently I've been playing a few nights a week online, so yeah, hopefully that's give us the match practice that I need to take onto this year.
Definitely. Well, you mentioned the tour coming back in July. We had the summer series, and it looked like the practice had paid off. Maybe not in terms of going all the way in the events, but a quarter-final, 2 last 16s, and looking at your losing averages that week, 96, 99, 106, 96, 96. I know you missed out on the match play that week, but how did you look back on that week as a whole?
Yeah, to be honest, I played well, and I was gutted, obviously, not to get into the match play, and because I felt my game was probably one of the most consistent people on the tour that week. And yeah, it was a big kick in the teeth not to qualify, because it's one of the biggest events to get through, And yeah, it was hard for me, but just to bounce back to reach 2 semi-finals of the majors was a pretty good year.
And not long after we see the Premier League resume, and we felt for yourself, Jermaine Watermina and Jeffrey Desvan, the 3 challengers playing behind closed doors, not getting that big home reception like you had in Newcastle the previous years. How hard was it to get up for that game, given all that had been taken away?
Yeah, to be honest, it was hard, because that was my first taste of playing without a crowd. I didn't know what to expect. Obviously, it's a massive difference to playing from 3,000-4,000 home crowd fans chanting your name, and obviously the buzz of it all. What I experienced in my first year was absolutely brilliant, and obviously not to get that again was gutting. But obviously I was still there playing darts and up there to do a job, which it just didn't click. I don't know if it was the no crowd situation, which I hadn't played in, or if it was just the fact that I was a bit disappointed, obviously not getting the same feeling as the rest of them.
And we had a busy end to the year, the PDC putting on a lot of events despite all the challenges with this virus at the moment. And for you, it affected you for your preparations. The World Grand Prix, you were due first up against Adrian Lewis. He tested positive for the virus. You end up playing Simon Whitlock the following day. Looking back, I know you mentioned at the time that you felt maybe things could be done differently, like Adrian and Stephen Bunting getting the money for qualifying. What things would you like to have changed if you could do that?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, that'll be the main thing. Them 2 lads deserve the prize money at least for getting there. They've worked hard all year. It wasn't their fault. They picked up the virus. And I felt pretty bad for them. They were hard done by. And Stephen dropped out the top 16. Adrian Lewis, even though he was 1 place above me, he dropped down below us, and he didn't. It was a good game for me against Adrian, because the win or lose, obviously if I won, I would have overtook him. If I lost, he would stay there, And it was one of those games where 1 win for either of us can either kickstart our season, and I would have been in the top 16 for the first time. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing for me, because I felt good. I was up for it. I went down to the practice area before the game. I was practicing about an hour or two beforehand, before I got someone come over to us and said, "Oh, look, you're not playing tonight. Such and such has obviously had a positive result. You're possibly going to be playing last on tomorrow against Simon Whitlock," which I was like, oh, you know what I mean? Trying to mentally prepare for one game, one opponent. I've got a great record against Adrian. I was prepared for that game, and it was hard to get myself prepared for Simon, even though it was the following day. But Simon was coming into some great form as well on the floor. He's playing a lot of online stuff, and look what he's done since that win against me.
I know before the World Championship, you said yourself you had a tough run of results, tough run of form. You said the Winter Series was the worst week of your darting career, and after the Players' Championship finals, you said it was a matter of time before things clicked back together. So what did you do during those 3 or so weeks to prepare for the big one, the World Championship?
I just give myself a few days off. I didn't pick a dart up. I just thought I'll have a little break, and then I'll start putting in extra hours, So apart from doing, say 3 hours a day, I'll do maybe 4, 5, break it up. But with us having the 3 days off, then I thought I would have to do it just to make up on it, and that's when I started playing these online competitions. I've had a few practice sessions with Ross Smith, Louis Williams. I'm having these practice sessions with Adam Hunt, and then I'm playing 1 or 2 competitions a week online, which has done me the world of good. And leading up to the World Championships, that's what I needed. And I felt my form was coming back as well before the World Championship, so I felt good in both games in the World Championship. I felt I played well against Darryl. I just missed a few darts at a double, and I didn't get another shot, So my form's there, my confidence is back, and hopefully this is a big year because I'm defending a lot of money this year, so hopefully I can pick up at the start of the year this time.
Well, let's look ahead, and we're going to see you on our screens a little bit earlier than we thought with the Masters this weekend. The field extended from the top 16 to the top 24. We recently spoke to Stephen Bunting. He said he was surprised when he heard the news. Was that a similar reaction that you had?
Yeah, definitely. I'm in a group chat with Ryan, Joyce, Adam Hunt and Glenn Durrant, and they said, "Oh, congratulations on the Masters," and I just thought they were winding us up as they always do, and when I seen the schedule and that come out by the PDC, I was quite relieved and shocked, to be fair, at the same thing. But it's a great opportunity for myself. Obviously, I'm not used to it. I'm just going to go up there and enjoy it. It's not a ranking event, but it's TV time, and obviously there's money to be made, and hopefully I can get a good start at the end and show what I'm capable of.
And I think it'll be the first time that you'll be back on stage at the Milton Keynes stage since the Premier League. Do you see that as a chance to maybe put that game to bed, put that performance to bed, and go on a good run?
Yeah, of course. There's no reason why not now. I think the World Championships, I think that was my first win on a stage without the crowd. So, it's nice to get that feeling and get the win again. And like I say, I've got the confidence back, which I needed and which I lacked back then. So, I don't see why I can't go out there and give it a good go.
I remember when we spoke last time, it was just off the back of another big run in a TV event, and we were saying that it's only a matter of time before you get your name on a PDC senior title. What a way to do it this weekend, an event that you probably weren't expecting to be in, and potentially you could be 3 or 4 games away from doing that.
Yeah, of course. Stranger things have happened, obviously. You've seen the likes of Dimitri, whatever they've done, big match play champion, Jose de Souza, he's won it. Was it the Grand Slam he won? Honestly, there's doors to be open, and now I need to put the time in, and I'm playing well. I feel I've got the game, and all I'm lacking is a title, and I think more will follow. So I've had my opportunities in the past. I'm going to open more doors to more opportunities and hopefully get that title and kick on.
And away from your darts, I remember last year during the lockdown we heard about your dad Gordon, a good player, and he potentially putting him up for Q School. We've not seen him on the list for this year. Is that waiting until next year when things are maybe back to normal?
Yeah, well, that's it. He's been practicing quite a bit at home recently, and obviously this lockdown, he's still working hard through it, So I think once he doesn't concentrate on work enough, I think he might give it a go. But he's work mad, so I think work will have to end before he goes to Q school. But hey, I'll keep trying my best to get him there.
Excellent. And lastly, before we let you go, you're not the only Newcastle fan that we've got on the show this week. We also spoke to Graham Fairhurst from the PDC a little bit about Newcastle United. And is it time for a change in the hot seat, do you think?
Yeah, without a doubt. It's not a good time at Newcastle, obviously, at the minute. Something needs to be changed. I think it's the same side as last season, which we felt were done all right last season, but they've brought in a proven goal scorer this year, and they're just not creating enough chances to him. He can't play up by himself all the time. You can't expect him to do everything. And I think St. Maximin come back. They can't just rely on them all the time. You see he's a big miss when he's not playing. So I think there's something need to be changed, and I think the manager has to go. He's had his chance, but we all said that at the start. We didn't want him, and he done all right last year. But he's just doing the same thing every time now, and we're just bored of that. We need something different. But obviously, I'll still follow them throughout. A big Newcastle fan, I like to see them do well. But if we're going to do well, we've got to change something, and I think it's the management.
Well, we shall see. Fingers crossed things can turn around there, and fingers crossed for yourself this weekend in the Masters and when the rest of the season gets underway, and always appreciate your time.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Thanks again to Chris for joining us. Now time to talk about our sponsor, Low Six, who, of course, present this show, and we've got a big contest for you guys this weekend, kicking off the Masters on Friday evening. There's a £500 contest, free to enter. All you've got to do is pick your 8 winners from the first round games. We're going to go through the first 4 games of the night. We'll put out all our picks for Friday on our Twitter, so keep an eye out for that. But let's go through the first 4 games, and the first one up is Ian White against Mensah Suljovic. How do you see the first game going?
Well, Mensah Suljovic, former Premier League player. Ian White, this is probably the first time in 4 or 5 years where he was not talked about as one of the people's choices for the Premier League, because he's coming off probably his weakest year since he really established himself as a top 16 player 5-6 years ago. Mensah Suljovic also coming off of his weakest and worst season in that time frame as well. Both of them have a lot to prove, both in this tournament and in the year ahead. That said, I think Mensah is playing that little bit better. He didn't get the results last year, but he did play well, and he did play well in the TV event. So I'm going to go Mensah to beat Ian White. I think it'll be a close match. I'll go 6-4.
Well, this is going to be an interesting opening game for the tournament, because I was looking back. This is Ian White's 7th consecutive appearance in the Masters and yet to get a win in the Masters. And previously it was just the top 16. This time round, Ian White's going to be playing a player outside the top 16 in Mensah Suljovic. But when you're coming into a tournament with that record, it will be in the back of your head. And Ian White did perform well at the World Championship without going far, as he usually does. Mensah, this is the first time that we're going to see him since Tablegate. I'll go the other way just to be different. I'll go with Ian White to break his duck, get that first win in the Masters. Second game up is one of the debutants this year, the Premier League champion Glenn Durrant against a player back in the Masters for the first time since 2015, Mervyn King. How do you see this game going?
Well, before I answer that, you mentioned how Ian White has never won a match in the Masters, but he has won a match at the same time as the Masters, and in fact won a title at the same time as the Masters back in 2013 when Pro Tour weekend overlapped with the first staging of the event. Ian White winning, I think, on the Saturday that weekend. But back to the match at hand, Mervyn King, one of the 2 closest he's come to winning an event was a TV event, was this back in 2014. Glenn Durrant has that TV event in the PDC as well as 10 in the BDO. Durrant's confidence has been down a bit recently, but he started to show some resiliency at Worlds. Mervyn King, though, has just been playing so well for so long. This is a tough one. But Mervyn King, coming off of probably his best year in a very long time and playing at the highest level he has in the PDC, is going to be just a little too much for Glenn, I think. I'm going to go Merv to win 6-3.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a hard one to call. I think this is one that could go 10, 11 legs. 2 former world masters going up against each other. I think we'd all love to see Mervyn King back in the Premier League. I know there's a lot of talk on Twitter about if Mervyn King can have a big run this weekend, getting him back in the Premier League, and it'd be good to see him go up against these top players week in, week out, or however the Premier League works when we eventually get to it. But performed very well in 2020, of course, getting to that final of the Players' Championship finals and pushing Michael van Gogh into that deciding leg, still looking for that first PDC televised title. And as you say, the Masters came so close to winning that 7 years ago. I'll go the same way, though. I'll go Mervyn King to pinch it 6-4, maybe 6-5. Third game up, two debutants going up against each other in the Masters. It is the World Match Play champion Dimitri Vanderberg against our guest on the show. So I shouldn't really be asking you who you're going to pick for this game, but I will anyway. He's up against Chris Dobey. How do you see this game going?
I gotta go with Chris Dobey. No, I have a nice long tradition here of picking against our guests. Nothing personal, Chris, except you decided to come on our show, so I guess it is personal in that regard because I have to pick against you. It's tradition. Yeah, I'm going Dimitri in this one. He's in the top 10 in the world now, and Dobey's just coming up. Really looked, you go back 12 months, and it looked like Dobey was finally breaking through. I mean, he qualified for the World Match Play, qualified for the Grand Prix for the first time, was just outside the top 16. But his floor game started to disappear right before COVID, and then he didn't really get back into gear once the season got kick-started. I think he's going to have a better year than he did last year, and he needs to because he's defending a lot of raking money. But I don't think his game is there yet. Dimitri's is. So I'm going to go Dimitri Vandenberg to win this. I'll go 6-3.
And I think my tradition is to go with our guests, back them, thank them for coming on the show, and back them to win their game that they've got coming up. So I will go with Chris Dobey. But you look at it on paper, and you've got Chris Dobey's not had the best of times recently. And how about this for comparison as well? We're playing this event where it's usually held over the last few years at the Marshall Arena in Milton Keynes, but Dimitri's last game on stage at the Marshall Arena was winning the World Match Play. And then you look at Chris Dobey's last game at the Marshall Arena on stage, and it was that performance in the Premier League as one of the challengers that's played behind closed doors and put in a disappointing performance against Dale Gurney, the handicapper's nightmare, who went on to survive Judgment Night. So contrasting fortunes there, coming back to this venue, but I always back our guests like you don't back our guests. So I'll go with Chris Dobey to put that performance to one side, get a win, and who knows, maybe go all the way. We'll see. But final game we're going to make our picks for on this show, and it is Christopher Tyske, another debutant in the Masters, against Simon Whitlock. How do you see this game going?
Yeah, Whitlock, another one of those players like Mervyn King, who's playing some of the best darts we've seen from him in a very long time, and maybe it'll be enough to get him back into the Premier League. Christopher Tyske finally got that big, real breakthrough at the World Championships, getting through to the quarterfinals. I think that's just what he needed, and right at the perfect time, besides the fact that it, cemented his spot in the top 16 in the world, which at the time we thought was necessary for him to get into the field. Obviously, with them expanding it, it wasn't necessary. And it punctuating it with that just dominant display over Simon Whitlock in the third round. Whitlock will have that weighing on him, I think. I don't think it'll affect his performance too much, but Ratajski will have that confidence knowing that he can whitewash him and that he can go far in these TV events in the PDC, and that's just what Ratajski needs. I think it'll be a tight match, but I think Ratajski will be the better player and get over the line. I'll go 6-4. I
think it's fair to say this one should be closer scoreline-wise than what the World Championship game was. Only a month or so ago, they met at Ali Pali, and one-sided to Christopher Tyske 4-0. Simon Whitlock, 2020, he's always going to be remembered for being the man that beat Michael van Gogh 3 times in a row on TV in big TV ranking events. It doesn't happen very often, but in fairness, what has he got to show for it afterwards? He didn't go on and win a big title. The MVG curse carried on, and he went out next round in all 3 occasions. So he is hungry. He does want to win another TV title before he does put his darts down. And the way he's playing, he's always capable of going on a run, be it a weekend or a week event. We've seen that over the last 12 months. So I'll be different as well. I'll go with Simon Whitlock to get a little bit of revenge for Ali Pali. So I'll go with him to get the win. Guys, if you want to get involved, download the PDC Picks app, 18 plus, UK residents only, T&Cs apply. Please gamble responsibly, begambleaware.org. And as I said, all of our picks We'll put them out on Twitter for all late first round games. So if you want to see how you get on against myself and you, Burton, please do so. Have a go in that contest, and we'll be back with some listener questions in a moment. But first, let's get to our final guest on this week's show, and it is with the boss of Darting Promotions, Mark Pritchard. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the boss of Darting Promotions, Mark Pritchard. Thanks for the time, Mark. How are you doing?
All right, very good. Well, very good, thank you.
Now, we'll come on to talk about your latest signing to your stable a little bit later, but first a little bit about you. Where did your interest in darts first come from?
Darts is something I've been interested in for quite a few years now. It was a little bit of a strange starting, really. I very first got involved with a local player to me, to the name of Jeff Baden, who basically just had a fallout with his manager at the time. I says, look, don't give up on it all. I'll take it on from here and we'll just go from there. And then it just went on, to be honest. I started to enjoy it more and more, and from there we went on to sign Luke Woodhouse and went on from there, really.
Yeah, as I mentioned, you're the man in charge of Darting Promotions, the management company that looks after the likes of Luke Woodhouse, Yella Clarkson. Is that how Darting Promotions started then, from that player and moving forward from there?
It is, yes. Yeah. As I say, it really started to get a little bit more serious when we signed Luke. And then obviously when he got his tour card and broke and got onto the pro tour, it basically went from there then, and I just thought, well, this is something that I'd like to really carry on doing, and started to look around at other players as well.
Before last weekend, it's fair to say the most high profile name in your stable was Yella Clarkson, the former BDO world champion. What's the process like in signing one of the top players?
Different, I think, is the best way to put it. Very different. But look, these lads they're great lads. They're brilliant lads to deal with. And to be honest, it's from the players right down at the development to a level that we've got right the way to the top, obviously including Michael now as well. They're just really, really good lads, and it's something that I really look into, as to join the team, really, because, we've got a certain sort of ethic that we like to, carry on with right the way through the team, and I think we've got that.
We had Yella on our show just after his quarterfinal at the UK Open last year. Obviously a big season coming up for him, down in 56th in the rankings heading into this year at the moment. Do you feel like 2021 could be the year that we see Yella make a sustained return to form?
I do, yes. Last year was difficult. It was difficult for a number of reasons, really. I think obviously he had his run at the UK Open, and then after that, then with obviously COVID hitting everything and things like that as well, it was very difficult for all the lads. It's very difficult for all the players, full stop, to try and get consistency and things like that, and into the game with stop-start season and everything. But it was just one of them things. But yeah, I do this year. I think he's now got a set of darts which he's very, very happy with. And yeah, I do. I really think we'll see a big turnaround for him this year.
Good to hear. Well, another of your players that we've mentioned, Luke Woodhouse, up into the top 50 now. What's the next step for him in his progress in the PDC?
He's just got to carry on doing what he's doing, to be honest. He has been fantastic, absolutely fantastic. From the very first day I started to look after him, he's just worked and worked and worked on his game, and he's now really starting to reap the rewards from it. How far do I think he can go? Who knows, really? That depends on, that really depends on Luke. But I honestly think he's comfortably a top 32 player. I think that should, I think that'll be his aim this year, to really push on and break into that top 32.
Probably the veteran player in your stable is Wayne Jones, who we saw get a win at the World Championship last month. What are his goals for the season?
To get to the end of the year and to just keep his tour card first and foremost. To break into the top 64. He's just, Wayne's Wayne, to be honest with you. He's Mr. Consistent, he's Mr. Reliable. He had a couple of years where he lost his tour card, and then, he was on the verge of giving it all up, and I managed to talk him round, and we did it another go, and away he went from there, and he's not looked back, to be honest with you. He just turns up and does what Wayne does, and he's so good to have around. He really, really is.
And we have to mention Callum Ridge too. He's just won the PDC's Young Player of the Year award. He got nominated for our awards that we did, the Young Player of the Year. Got a lot of votes in that from our listeners as well. How excited are you guys about Callum's future in the game?
Yeah, very, very excited about him. Again, 2020 was a tough year for Callum. He we had some bad news at the start of the year, but he's got his head down, and he's really done himself and his family proud last year. I think everyone knows that the talent the lad's got, and again, exactly the same as Luke. Really, he just keeps on. He's just got to keep on ticking along, and he'll just improve. And I think we've got some hopes for him, definitely.
As a management company, what have been the main challenges over the last 10 months while we've had this virus? We've seen the PDC get events back on quite frequently since July, but what's it been like arranging travel, hotels and things like that for your players?
Testing, very, very testing. We especially the travelling, if there was any travelling to do abroad, etc. We had the two lads, Craig Galliano and Justin Hewitt, playing for Gibraltar in the World Cup of Darts. And that was a task alone, just to get them from Gibraltar to here to Austria was just it was a difficult task in itself. But look, we've just got to sit here and just applaud the PDC, the PDPA, and everyone involved really for getting darts on. So, if they can do that, then, the least we can do is sit here and make sure we put in our time to make sure the lads have got the best to actually get them there and to play in the events.
Definitely. Well, let's talk about your new signing then. At the weekend, you announced Michael Smith has joined the team at Darting Promotions. We know Michael went solo in 2020 after a long time with his previous management. So how did the move to you guys come about?
I've always got on with Michael really well. And obviously, he left his previous management company and, he was looking after himself last year sort of thing. But I think, there's a lot to organise, for the lads and things like that. And especially when you're someone like Michael Smith, who's, top 10 in the world, he's, Premier League and different things like that. And I think, I think he's just thought, right, I wanted to take the pressure off his shoulders, because, there's enough pressure on these lads when they go to all the TV events and Pro Tours, etc. The last thing they need to be thinking of is booking flights, booking hotels, organising travel, etc., etc. They shouldn't, they don't want to be thinking about stuff like that. And I just think, now it might just be that step that he needs to take him to that level of winning what he will, hopefully be winning.
Yeah, and it's obviously a big coup for you guys, bringing in a top 10 player and someone who not long ago was in the top 4 or 5 in the world. How excited are you to have Michael in your stable of players now?
Yeah, extremely. I think it's a boost for everyone, really. It's been nice having players, like Callan and Luke and Yeller, and watching them do what they do, and watching them improve and go from the starting point up to where they are. But obviously, Michael, with all his experience of big major finals and things like that, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. The young lads who we've got on the development tour are they're all excited as well to have him on board, because it's just, I think it's just one of them things. It'll give everyone else a boost, as well as obviously, hopefully we'll help Michael push on and do what he's hopefully going to do.
Yeah, it's not long before we see Michael back on our screens, the Masters this weekend, perhaps a more important event than usual with that 10th Premier League spot still vacant. How is Michael feeling about this weekend?
Great, absolutely great. He's looking forward to getting back to it now. The breaks that the lads have, he's obviously, he tries to have a break, etc. But it's a little bit different this time. Normally a lot of the players will try and get away on holiday, etc. But obviously with the times now, it's just not possible. So he's kept himself busy. He's been hitting the practice board hard, and he's feeling good. He's feeling very, very good. So fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes. The first event of the year is just always a tough one. The Masters can be a bit of a funny event, really. You've got all the top players, they'll try new equipment, etc. So we'll just see how it goes. Look, Michael will go. He'll go there and do what he does best, and that's play. That's play darts and win matches. And we'll just, all we can do really is take it from there, and we'll build for the rest of the year.
We all know the ability that Michael has, but yet to land that big title on the TV. We spoke a little bit about what Michael's going to bring to the stable, especially with the younger players that you've got. But what do you think you and the guys at Darting Promotions can bring to help Michael achieve those goals?
Well, I think, we do everything. I like to sit here and do everything for the players, everything. So all they've got to do now is practice and turn up at events and play darts. That's what they do. So, our aim is just to take every little bit of pressure off the players' back, financially, and of course, with organisation, etc. And, we just go from there, sort of thing. One thing I've never ever done with any of my players is sat there and said, look, I think you need to do this with your throw, I need to do this with your throw, because if I was qualified enough to tell a player that, I'd be up there playing darts myself. But, we sitting to the side of the stage, or, wherever we sit and watch, you do see things on the stage. Luke and Callum are a prime example when they've been coming through the rankings. When they first started playing, it was all huff and puff and throwing your arms around in the air on stage, etc. And, it's one thing that we try and say to the lads, look, try and bring that out of your game. Sometimes it's frustrating, but don't let it eat at you, don't let it beat you, and just go from there. But I'm really looking forward to this year. I really am. I think with the way times are at the minute, it's really, really difficult for everyone. But I know the lads have all been working hard. I'm really looking forward to it.
Brings us to the last question I had down here, which is to look ahead to 2021. And as we know, it's going to be a little bit longer before things get back to normality. But the PDC, they're going to be pushing on with events, which is great to see for us as fans and the players and everyone involved. But what are you most looking forward to in 2021?
I always start off from the very, from the youth players and work my way up, to be honest with you. The development tour players who we've got, Sean the Gret, Justin Hewitt and Craig Galliano from Gibraltar, Owen Maiden, Jack Mail and Conor Pickett from over here in England. Yeah, I love the development tour, and it just gives me that little bit, of excitement, ready to watch them this year, because they're just progressing every time I see them. So I really look forward to watching them. As for the Pro Tour players, as I say, Wayne's first aim will be to break into the top 64. And do I think he can do it? I do, yeah. I really do. I think his consistency is good enough to get in there. I think, as you say, this is a big year for Yella, but I think you'll see that. I think you'll see some huge signs of improvement from Yella this year. I really, really do. And then Luke and Callan progressing all the way. Hopefully, Callan into the top 50, and then looking at the top 32, and Luke hopefully pushing towards the top 32. And Michael, let's hope we can break that duck of a first TV major. Yeah,
and who knows, it could happen this weekend. Wish you all the best for your players for 2021. Congratulations again on the signing of Michael Smith over the weekend, and wish you all the best for what's coming up this year.
Thank you very much, mate, and thank you very much for having me.
Thanks again to Mark for joining us, and we'll finish up with some listener questions. And the first one comes from Matt Langan, who says, what COVID impact disappoints you most about 2020? 1. Peter Wright missing his victory lap as world champ. 2. Fallon Sherrock missing her victory lap as Queen of the Palace. 3. Jeff Smith's explosive start getting forward by lockdown. Or 4. Singapore missing the World Cup. What do you reckon?
And there's a lot of other things that I could say as well. Of those four, though, I'm going to go with number one, just because it is a rite of passage for the world champion to be able to. And let me change that. Number one, Peter Wright / Wayne Warren missing their victory laps as world champion, because that's part of the honors and the prestige and the rights that come with winning the world championship, is to have that trophy for a year, to bring it to exhibitions, to bring it across the country and across the world in the PDC because of, going to the World Series events. And Peter Wright missed out on this, and that was his first world title, and very possibly, being that, he's already in his 50s, his only world championship. He could win another, but there's no guarantees. Even Garen Press has no guarantees that he'll win another. There's no guarantee Michael Van Gogh will win another. So of those four, missing out on that opportunity, Wayne Warren, he's trying to keep the trophy. Hopefully he gets that opportunity to at least parade it at some point, because the BDO is no more. He is the last BDO world champion. Peter Wright, maybe he'll win it again and get that honor. But I think, both of them, that's a shame for them. So of those four, it doesn't take away from them being world champion. It does take away from their pocketbook, and it does take away from them being able to celebrate. So I'll say that option of those four.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Wayne Warren there, because I had down here on my notes, not 1, 2, 3 or 4, but 5 and 6, and 5 was Wayne Warren. Of course, it's well documented now. He didn't get £100,000 for winning that BDO World Championship. He got £23,000, a big dip. And then when you factor in COVID as well, and missing out on all the exhibitions, all the tournaments, everything that he would have been involved in 2020, I think he's got to be at number one. Number two, I'd put the WDF, because as much as we were a little bit worried about what we're going to see going forward underneath the PDC with the BDO's demise, the WDF early part of 2020, they had outlined plans to take over essentially and put on a world championship, put on a world masters, and before they could even get anything announced as far as dates, venues, the virus came in, and we're still waiting for that side of darts to get back up and running. So for me, outside of those four options, I'd go with them two. But if I was to pick one of those, I think I'd go away from Peter Wright. And okay, it's a little bit selfish. I was able to see that walk on in person in Aberdeen, the opening night of the Premier League, and see him get that hero's reception as world champion. But I think I'm going to go with number two, Fallon Sherrock, and missing that World Series, which would have been a huge opportunity for her, ladies darts, and the exposure of the ladies game. I know that it's been held over to this year, and again, we don't know if the World Series will go ahead this year, but you think if it gets postponed again this year and it gets held over to 2022, it's going to kind of lose a little bit, isn't it? Because yes, what she did was incredible, but it'd have been 2 years ago, and the moment's kind of gone. Unless she does go and win a tour card at Q School, which she certainly could do this year or next year, then you kind of get that buzz back again. But if she doesn't win a tour card at Q School, it kind of loses it a little bit. So for me, I'll go with number two.
Now, next question comes from Juanita McDade. And, we just talked about 2020. Let's look forward. What are you most looking forward to in the coming year of darts?
Well, I mean, kind of a cop-out, really, but I think everything, whatever we're going to see this year, because I learned really during the 4-month break of darts. Okay, we saw some online stuff during the break, but when we did get darts back, you are grateful for the events now that you get to see. And yes, we know there's no fans there. We do get to watch it at home, which is great, whether that be a Pro Tour event, a floor event, or the big TV events. We're very fortunate that we've got an organisation like the PDC at the top, putting on these events for the players, for the fans, for everyone involved in darts, and keeping darts going, because unfortunately, aside from the PDC, there's not been a lot since the virus happened. So for me personally, just looking forward to whatever we do get to see this year. If I was to pick something aside from the PDC, it would be everything underneath, the WDF, MAD, UKDA. They've done a lot, considering they're not able to do a lot in terms of events, but setting things up, getting things ready, being as prepared as they can be to put things on. I'm just hoping for them and everyone involved in that side of darts that when we get to the second half of the year or towards the later end of the year, that we do see what they've been able to prepare, what they've been able to get ready actually happen, and events, whatever it may be, that we start to see that side of darts get up and running again. And I guess for me as well, hopefully we'll see the Stowmarket and District Darts League come back as well, and I can end my almost 1 year unbeaten run by losing my first game.
Yes, I guess your unbeaten run's a little longer than mine since I played in the second Bang Average Darts League and you only played in the first.
We don't talk about that.
Well, I think I even won some matches in that and hit a 180. Go figure. Top the 180 tables, mind you, for Division 2. What am I most looking forward to? Yeah, I mean, I'm most looking forward to when things are back to normal and there's Euro Tour events. I'd love to go to a Euro Tour event this year. I didn't go to one now the last 2 years after going to a few the previous couple of years. That's when things will be back, when there's a big raucous crowd of Germans at a Euro Tour event somewhere in some small town that otherwise none of us would have ever heard of, singing for Max Hopp even when, Max Hopp isn't playing. That's what I'm looking forward to. Hopefully it happens. Hopefully it happens sooner rather than later. Later probably is more likely, but I'm going to say that's what I'm most looking forward to. Some European tour event in the middle of nowhere, Germany, with 3,000 drunk fans.
Fingers crossed for that. Well, last listener question that we've got for this week's show, and it comes from DMO0613, and he says, who is going to win the Masters this weekend?
Whew. Well, if you look historically, it's a very safe bet to say Michael van Gerwen, or maybe it's a safe bet to say the world number one, or maybe it's a safe bet to say the world champion, because the majority of times the world number one has won. The majority of times Michael van Gerwen has won. The majority of times the world champion has won, or half the times I should say the world champion has won. So I'm going to say one of those three. Either, well, wait, no, those are all the same person. I don't know. Well, Michael van Gerwen's obviously a separate person. I think there is a good chance it's going to be either MVG or Gerwen Price. I have to pick, don't I? Well, I was right about it I was right about the World Championship. Maybe I'll be right about this. I'll go Gerwen Price to follow in Peter Wright's footsteps and follow a World Championship by winning the Masters. I'm not going to say a last leg decider over Michael Smith, though. They'll be different, only because they would meet in the quarterfinals.
I did have Gerwen Price down here on my bit of paper, but I will change my prediction to be different. And listeners to this show will know to listen to your picks rather than mine. Of course, we have just heard from the co-host that won the Tip of the Year in our awards recently. So belated congratulations for that. I'll go different, though. I'll go with someone outside of the top three. I'll go with no Michael van Gerwen, no Gerwen Price, no Peter Wright. We're going to see a new name on the pot. We saw it so many times in 2020, these big trophies being reeled out and a new name being added to the list. I'm going to go with a new name to win the Masters this weekend. And how about Dave Chisnall? He won your tip of 2020 for that win against Michael van Gerwen in the World Championship 5-0. He's going to win my tip of 2021 by winning his first TV title this weekend at the Masters.
I guess you're just going to keep tipping him every single event until you get it right so that you can win the award this year. But now we have a new segment. Before I say anything else for this week, we have our new trivia question segment where first one to tweet us the correct answer will get a shout out on next week's show, and we'll turn it over to Matthew Kiernan, who has the trivia question.
Well, time for this week's quiz question. Who were the first two players that contested the first match ever, that's the first match ever, in the PDC Masters? The year was 2013.
Now, anything else for this week?
As always, got to say thank you to our guests for joining us. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate your support. If you're new, if you've joined us during the World Championship or over the last few weeks when there's not been a lot of darts going on, you want to find out what things are going on or get some darts content to listen to, tweet us, say hello, or email us weeklydartscast@gmail.com. It's nice to put some names to the listeners that we have, and we'll be back next week to review the Masters and look ahead to Q-School, which is coming up very, very soon, and we've got some good guests lined up as well, some that we've already chatted to, so keep an eye out for them in the next few weeks as well.
Yes, indeed, and closing in on episode 200, we should be there in a few months. Bring back the quadruple 20, quadruple 20, double top. We'll be back on the checkouts with the quadro boards, but we'll start preparing for that. Let us know if there's anyone you'd like on, not just for that episode, but for any of the 14 that come before then. Try to get the trivia question right. I got it second try, I think, when Alex posted to me. So I'm not too ashamed with that. But for Alex Moss, I am Burton DeWitt. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. Until then, you're just going to have to hang tight.